Well, guys, it's official. The Chicago Bulls have been eliminated from playoff contention, or I guess I should say even play-in contention, which we all knew was going to happen. It was just a matter of time. But when you saw that the Wizards, in their next game, that it was going to be against the Cavs, you knew that this was going to be the end of the road for the Bulls. And the question now is, well, where do the Bulls go from here going into the offseason? That's what I want to talk about in this video. So what's going on, everyone? You were listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Guys, I'll briefly talk about the Bulls versus Nets here in a little bit. I know I usually come out with a post-game video after every Bulls game, but with just 2 remaining games left, now 1, and the Bulls not really playing for anything, there isn't really much to discuss and react to for these last 2 games, although I do still maintain that it is very important for the Bulls to close out their season strong for their free agency chances, which I made a separate video about on how critical it was for the Bulls and how they show up to the league in their final 5 games and my 5 keys for what they need to do to display in order to draw some intrigue for free agents going into the offseason. So check that out in case you missed it. But because the Bulls season is over, really just 1 regular season game at this point, these final post-game videos are going to be more brief. And really, I'm going to start treating this as more of the offseason at this point, because let's face it, as Bulls fans, we've kind of been waiting for this season to just for once come to an end. Once Lavine entered the health and safety protocol, and hopefully we just want to put this season behind us and move on to the next. And so what does it look like for the Bulls now? Where do they go from here, having yet another disappointing season in which they missed the playoffs, even with the playoffs being expanded to 10 teams? I know some might not necessarily consider it a disappointment compared to what we have seen in the prior season post Jimmy Butler trade, and given the fact that this was always designed to be an evaluation year, but still the Bulls, with the talent that they have, a new coach, a new front office, a big trade made at the deadline, you would expect the Bulls to at least finish in the top 10 of the Eastern Conference, where they are only 15 teams in the entire conference alone. That shouldn't be too much to ask for. Now, I won't go too much into depth about my thoughts and grades on the Bulls and their performance this season, as I'm planning on having an end of season player and team grades video out on Monday, and not just giving my grades for the teams and players, but also including your grades on the team and the players, which you can go and vote in the Bulls Central Discord server, where you can find a separate channel for that on the server, where you can give each player a letter grade from A to F. The link to the Discord is in the description if you're interested in joining, if you haven't already. So anyway, be on the lookout for that video on Monday. Make sure to get your votes in before then. But we're here to talk about, not here to talk about this season in this video, but more so looking into the future. So I've talked about these topics separately a bit in pieces in prior videos, really around the Bulls salary cap and what they'll have available to them going into the offseason, their chances of landing a top 4 pick, which if they do, they would get to keep their pick and not send it to the Magic. The players they will have under contract going into next season, which players are going to be on expiring contracts, etc. I've covered a lot of that, so I'll try not to go into too many details on that one in this video, since I already have a number of them in the past, but rather let's talk about some of the key dates for this offseason that if you're a Bulls fan, you're going to be looking out for. First, and probably most important, June 22nd. This is the day of the NBA draft lottery. It takes place at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the reason that this is so important is, even though the Bulls traded their first round pick to the Orlando Magic in the Nikola Vucevic trade, that pick is top 4 protected. So for all of us Bulls fans, we're going to be watching the draft lottery like a hawk, with fingers crossed, just hoping the Bulls somehow land into the top 4. Now, the Bulls, as of right now, have a 26.3% chance of falling into the top 4, which again is what the NBA lottery consists of, meaning, teams can only move up into the top 4. It used to be the top 3 until about 2 years ago, which is why Arturis ensured that those first round picks that they traded were in fact top 4 protected. So a close 1 in 4 chance of landing the top 4 pick isn't that bad, but still not that good either. You're talking about, close to a 74% chance that that pick is likely going to be moved to Orlando. But either way, that day is going to be huge for the Bulls as far as their future is concerned. Not saying that it's going to be the end all be all, because I think, for the Bulls, with how aggressive this front office is and has been, they're not as concerned about draft picks. They're more concerned about building this team through free agency and trades. So they're likely viewing this as, well, if we get the top 4 pick, that's an added bonus. But the reason I think it's huge is really only for one reason, and it's in the event that the Bulls get the number 1 pick, which they have only a 6% chance of obtaining, which is actually a lot more than the 1.8% chance that they had in landing the number 1 pick in 2008, which got them Derrick Rose. And the reason I think getting the number 1 pick would be such a massive win for the Bulls. Well, despite the obvious of getting the number 1 pick, that's always a big win, but rather because Cade Cunningham, who will likely be the number 1 pick, he is expected to be a generational talent type player, and he's a point guard, which the Bulls have been talking about upgrading. I know a lot of people have been saying, well, do we even need necessarily to upgrade the point guard position now that we, Coby White, the way that he's been playing recently, does it actually make sense for the Bulls? Which I agree to an extent. He has been playing considerably better, and I've been very impressed with how quickly he has learned to be a more effective passer and facilitator, and I will be making a separate video on that topic because there is a lot that needs to be discussed on that matter. But if the Bulls were able to get lucky and end up with Cade Cunningham, putting him alongside Lavine and Vucevic, again, the Bulls, will all know all of this information before free agency begins. That puts them in an incredible position when going into free agency, if they actually are able to get a top 4 pick, in this case a number 1 pick. It just makes the pitch process to free agents that much easier, despite the fact that the Bulls missed the playoffs, because not only do you have an established star, 2-star NBA players, but you also have young and up-and-coming talent in Cade Cunningham and Patrick Williams and even Coby White. So that's the first debate. That's the first date to keep in mind in this offseason. Second, a little bit less important, but the NBA Draft Combine will take place from June 21st to the 27th. It's a good opportunity to see what up-and-coming prospects are making their way into the NBA, but more importantly, the NBA Draft will take place on July 29th. Of course, that only really ends up being meaningful for the Bulls if they do in fact land a top 4 pick, unless of course you're interested in seeing who the Bulls snag as their 2nd round pick. Then finally, free agency begins on August 2nd, starting at 6 p.m. Eastern, where teams will now be allowed to contact and take meetings with players and their agents and make offers to sign them to their team, officially anyway. That's the official start date. I say official because we all know that deals are already being discussed behind the scenes, which is why contract offers are already made and accepted just a few minutes after free agency opens. But this will be a key free agency period for the Bulls, especially given the cap flexibility that they have with all the expiring contracts that will be going off of their books. Contracts like Felicio, Valentine, Arcidiacono, Markkanen, Garrett Temple, Daniel Tice, Javonte Green. I think first and foremost, it'll be interesting to see who the Bulls offer extensions to. I know a lot of Bulls fans, including myself, would love for the Bulls to re-sign Tice, even Garrett Temple, if they can keep him close to a vet minimum. Markkanen, of course, what's been talked about all season is whether the Bulls will try and retain him when he becomes a restricted free agent. He's had a few good games, here to close out the end of the season, which has been great to see, but, overall a pretty disappointing season for Markkanen. And is he worth a big contract? I would say no, and you're probably going to have some team in the league that is going to make him a pretty big offer, and it's likely not going to be worth matching if you're the Bulls. So again, the question, and then I'll briefly talk about the Bulls game against the Nets, the question is, where do the Bulls go from here? And having yet another season of missing the playoffs after having traded away future assets for a 30-year-old all-star. Well, for the Bulls, they have to hit on free agency this offseason. I'm not saying that they need to, hit on bringing in a superstar like Kawhi Leonard, although that would be amazing. It would be incredible to see Kawhi Leonard in a Bulls uniform. But it wouldn't be a failed free agency if they don't get Kawhi, because Kawhi is likely staying in LA. But they need to bring in some quality pieces to complement their current roster, particularly on defense. I still think it is worth bringing in a veteran point guard who can be that floor general for the Bulls and also a mentor to Coby White. And I think it's worth bringing in a 3-and-D wing player as well. Now, I've talked about this in past videos on who in particular I would like to see the Bulls pursue in free agency, so I won't go into depth on that, as far as like those players, who they are and their player strengths and what they bring to the Bulls, but I'll leave a link to those videos where I've talked about that in the description if you want to check them out. But yes, the Bulls cannot falter in free agency. They have to bring in the right players that can fix the areas where the Bulls are deficient when it comes to defense, playmaking, and taking care of the ball, not turning the ball over. And really doing this to keep Zach Lavine interested in going into the final season of his contract and wanting to remain with the Bulls when he becomes a free agent next season. Now, of course, it would be amazing if the Bulls land a top 4 pick before heading into free agency, as that will improve their free agency opportunities even further, knowing they're bringing in another young piece. But that's really out of the Bulls' control at this point. So it's not something we can really say, well, here's what the Bulls have to do this offseason, because as far as the draft pick and the pick is concerned, that is simply going to be the luck of the draw, where they can actually make impact and improvements that are within their control. What they can do is through free agency and trades. I do firmly believe with this front office, based on the moves that they made at the deadline, they're going to look to be aggressive and make big moves to really show to the league and also to the ownership that they mean business in trying to improve this roster fast and becoming competitive now. What I will say though is, although it was a disappointing season, the Bulls did finish their 7 or so remaining games very well. Once Lavine and Vucevic came back and showed that this team does have the potential to be a very capable playoff team, they did that, and potentially a contending team once a few pieces have been added. They're not a contending team by any means as of right now, but adding a few additional pieces, that could get them there, along with the hopeful improvement and development from the young players in Patrick Williams and Coby White. So I don't think Bulls fans should look at this as a doom and gloom scenario of what we have done. We traded away our future for Vooch. The guys, we have on the roster aren't franchise-changing players, and Lavine is going to be on the final year of his deal, that he's going to leave after this offseason, etc. No, I look at it more so from the perspective of we have 2 all-stars in their primes who haven't really gotten much time together. You have 2 younger players who are still learning and developing and haven't come close to entering their primes in Coby White and Patrick Williams, a new coach and a new front office in an evaluation year, and the Bulls still have protections on their picks, so it's not like they mortgage their entire future for nothing. The Bulls still have a lot of talent on this roster to make them competitive going into free agency. Anyway, I'll discuss more of the Bulls offseason, the upcoming week, so I'll stop discussing that for now. As you may or may not have seen, it's I know it's kind of hard to watch a Bulls game when it means nothing, but if you saw the Bulls versus Nets game like I did, the Bulls actually played pretty well, at least in the first half anyway. They came out strong against a fully loaded Nets team with their big 3. None of their star players were being rested, and of course Lavine was out for this game due to knee soreness, which I'd have to think that if the Bulls were still in this and fighting for a playoff spot, he likely would have played. But what I liked seeing from this game was Patrick Williams finally showing some aggression on offense, which he kind of needed, given the fact that Lavine was out. Tice and Troy Brown Jr., they were also out as well, so 24 points, which was career high for Patrick Williams on very efficient shooting, 9 for 14 from the floor, 3 for 4 from 3 to go along with 6 rebounds. It was probably one of his best games all season. I guess it's a little easier when there isn't much pressure to play. And you can play a little more freely, but hope to see more of these types of games from P. Will going into next season. The other bright spot, yet again, Markkanen had himself a nice game, 14 points, finding his stroke again from outside. And then, of course, Thaddeus Young had himself an incredible game, 19 points and 13 rebounds. On the other side of the token, Vucevic and Coby White had really, really bad games. It's a challenge, going against some of the best players in the league, but their shooting tonight was just awful, shooting a combined 5 for 28 from the field, 1 for 14 from 3. Coby only had 3 points the entire game, shooting 1 for 10. However, he did make up for it a bit in some areas, getting 7 rebounds and 6 assists. So he is still showing his capability to be effective at displaying or distributing the ball and also navigating the offense. But the guy just could not find his shot tonight. And again, Vucevic, 10 points and 11 rebounds, didn't make a single 3. So it's not really a surprise the Bulls lost this game, given the Nets played with a fully healthy roster. Lavine, Tice, and Troy Brown Jr. were out for the Bulls, and obviously Vucevic and Coby White had very off games, but it was good to see Patrick Williams have himself a nice game before finishing his rookie season. Anyway, the Bulls will play their final game tomorrow against the Bucks. I'll have a live group chat for that for anyone who is interested in watching the Bulls' final game before the end of the season. I know most probably won't, but since I haven't had a live chat for the last 2 games, I'll have at least one more for the last game of the season. I'll continue coming out with videos for the offseason, as there are a lot of topics I've been wanting to cover in the offseason. It will be a good time to do so. So be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.